So I wanted to ask everyone, who knows Netflix? Okay. And who uses Netflix? Because there's more people that use Netflix than know Netflix. It's interesting. That's great. So, and now, does anyone actually, has anyone watched Breaking Bad? Okay, very good. And how about Jack White's Travels with His Father? See, Netflix is a global phenomenon. It's different for everyone. It's interesting. I've flown to Turkey, I've flown to UAE, and lots of people know about it, and they get excited about it. And the cool thing about Netflix, it is a cool thing where it's adaptive to everyone's lifestyle, and it's also adaptive to your particular interests. Lifestyle, because it works online, it works also on a mobile fashion, it works offline. It has content that's always changing every day depending on how you use it and also what you want proactively to see. And it has a lot, it's becoming more of a content producer itself, and it's learning from its users and always recommending more and more titles that are relevant to its community. And Ricky Gervais could be more relevant to the UK and not so much to Singapore, for example. So they're learning from their learners. So imagine if you could take that experience that Netflix has, that's adaptable and that's inclusive for all people, really for all ages, but apply it to your company. Imagine you can create your own Netflix with your own content and maybe even educational content that's aligned with your company values, your culture, as well as you think that this intrinsically has titles that are interesting for your employees. Today it's possible. And I can explain how and give you some examples of how it's being used across the world today. First, just a bit of context. So we see the world today where we have an abundance of lots of things we can choose from in our toolkit for an employee engagement perspective. Lots of different elements can be more transactional, more can be more designed to develop your long-term sustainability. Some are more focused on solving particular solutions or pain points that everyone has. But it's quite overwhelming, the abundance of choice. On top of that, it's very hard to measure the value of a lot of the things that you are implementing, and it's particularly difficult if the value is intangible or tangible, but it's different for every single person. What we think as an organization is that one of the most powerful employee engagement tools is actually training, and we've learned that employees just simply want it. They want their employer to invest in their well-being and their training. It's actually the #1 factor or indicator of a great place to work. We also see that a lot of companies or a lot of employees today want their company to invest in professional development in general, whether it's oriented around coaching, mentorship, digital libraries, etc. But they want to have an element of teach me what fits my lifestyle, and that's oriented to my job so I can be better. And what you offer for training, what you offer for learning is not going to be the same for everyone. And so that's very important to recognize. I might want to read more about Brexit, or I might want to learn a little bit more about financial markets because maybe it interests me, because maybe I trade. So it's important to really have an element of flexibility and choice. And that's really hard to do in many cases, depending on what you're offering to your employees. One thing we have noticed is that a lot of well-being managers care a lot about these particularly four issues, which is obviously retaining employees, increasing loyalty, increasing productivity, increasing employee satisfaction. And what we've noticed is that learning and development, in terms of as a strategic tool, an asset, actually can fit a lot of these boxes. Sorry, it's jumping all the time. But now if we move on we talked a lot about learning and development, so now how important is that actually to build a culture, your culture today? I'm actually going to scare you right now. And I apologize, but I don't apologize, because it's actually important to know this. But within 3 years from now, about 50% of the workforce is going to have to be or upskilled, because of AI, because of machine learning, because of cloud computing, because of cyber security, because of a lot of different factors that are around the market today, and that's inevitable. So it's very important to be able to adapt to this, to the fast changing market, so that all our employees don't become obsolete, and it will impact more some people versus others. The top 10 skills that we need to survive, to be very employable and to be marketable as individuals are changing. Humanistic skills like emotional intelligence, for example, is increasingly important. It's elements like complex problem solving, critical thinking, thinking out of the box, being innovative, are elements that are even increasingly more important as skills that we want most of our employees to have. And so it's important to try to amplify those particular skills as much as possible. And it's a bit scary, but if you don't have an investment in learning development, if you don't have a function that's learning development orientated today, then it might happen your chances of being surviving in essence. And actually, many companies think it's actually something that's urgent, that they have enough resources or even have people completely focus on learning development and well-being today. Going back to the original discussion around what are different elements, different tools that can be used for employee engagement, one thing that we think as a company is important is, going back to learning, is that learning is one of those things where if it's inclusive, if it's pervasive, if it covers lots of different skills and fills a lot of gaps for different people, it can have the highest ROI, the highest impact, versus a lot of other things. And impact can be seen by just seeing how people are happy and interacting in the department or on the floor across their peers. It can be obviously seen in productivity and the actual performance, and also measured by employee retention over time. So the hard part is, how do you actually build a strong learning culture, and how do you develop it in a way so that you have everyone as engaged as possible, and not just one person or not only the most junior people, but also top management, middle management, across different departments. It's a very hard thing to think about, but there's some ideas that we have that we can share with you that we've seen have worked. The first foremost thing to embrace is that learning is universal. I want to learn more about social media, about Instagram. I don't know a lot about Instagram. My wife does, and she posts pictures all the time. I'd love to learn more about it. I work for a Spanish company, and I didn't know Spanish until I joined. So I'm on the side learning a bit more, about improving my vocabulary, for example, in Spanish and so forth, and getting the accent right. There's some people that want to maybe learn how to code, and maybe they have a latent interest of getting into the product team, but they are in a different, maybe in a data science team today, so they'd like to learn more about how certain elements that are product related or coding related, so they can move on to that, take that leap in the future. I would like to learn more about meditation, and I would like to not read a book about meditation. I'd like to hear a podcast or two from some experts, spiritual healers or so forth in the field of meditation that can teach me the best practices for meditation and so forth. So you need to have an ability to have a collection of a lot of different content elements that are multimedia even, that can focus a lot on lots of things, whether it's professional and skills, personal skills, or just hobbies. Like Mary, we like to watch the Bake Off. Maybe sometimes, what if we read one of Mary Berry's books about baking, and maybe it would be of interest to some of us. We see is just like Netflix, but if you apply it to the workforce. Imagine if you go to your own, as an employee, you go to your own platform. Imagine that it recognizes you as an employee of the business development department, or then you can see titles that are relevant to business development. Imagine if you are from the product the department or data science department, you can see content that's related to that. Imagine if content is always changing, for your company, and it's actually relevant to what your company values and mission today. Whether it's I want to build more entrepreneurship, whether I want to be more customer-centric. Imagine all of that, all of the content that you see is exactly aligned with all those values, so you don't have to spend time looking for it on Amazon, etc. But also, you have the element of finding titles that you want. And so this is what I mean, is like, imagine if Mark is in the data science team, and he wants to learn about Python, data mining. But then Maria in marketing has heard about the Purple Cow title, and she wants to understand a bit more about that philosophy. And imagine if Marco, the office manager, is 3 months in the workforce, and he wants to improve his Excel techniques. So there is an ability, if you have the right experience, to allow everyone to learn exactly what they want. As long as once you search for something, it's there. And as long as it's also served to you in a format that makes sense. So for example, that's mobile friendly, that you can read on the go, etc. So this going on about, the lifestyle. So it has to be adapt to your lifestyle. So a lot of people are reading in the tube. They even have a physical book in the tube, maybe this big, reading in the tube, and they're, it's a bit heavy. But everyone is trying to squeeze in some time when they commute back and forth, or when they have breaks, or when they're with their kids to learn. It's true, or read something of interest. And so it's possible as long as you have the technology serving that purpose, so and facilitating that. So it has to work offline. For example, you can, with text-to-speech, where where it's an ebook, but you hear someone's voice in a dialect, a British dialect or an American dialect, speaking to you instead of reading to you, because you just don't want to look at the book. Imagine if I want to just watch a podcast, I can watch it very quickly. Imagine if I want to have it mobile friendly. Imagine if I have dyslexia and I want to be able to space out characters a little bit better, and not destroy my eyes. You need to have a system that works depending on the best way, the way you want to learn and want to read. And that's very difficult. Imagine if you take a step further and say, I can allow you as an employee, but also as a parent, to have content that's also for your kids. So, I don't know what's going on. It's ahead. So imagine if I want to read Peppa Pig with my kids, instead of going to Amazon or going to local bookstore, which is fine. But imagine if I don't do that and I just look in a platform that my company, my employers offered me, and I can search that keyword Peppa Pig, and imagine it's right in there in the same place I go to every day. But now I can use it with my kids, play with my kids, maybe in a tablet, for example, maybe it can be a video and so forth. It'll be extraordinary, and particularly because if you're a parent, you're very sensitive to these things. You want the best for your kids. So this Netflix for your company can also extend its value to also a family benefit if you want it to be like that. Now, the economic benefits of having a Netflix experience can, as long as it's with a lot of good content, as long as it has models which are basically more of a lending model, like a library model, rather than a full right, I'm buying a title for life, we're able to bring down the price of accessing content in general. And so it's possible that so employees will save a lot of money from not buying some things that they intrinsically wanted to do, or companies can use it as a way as a powerful engagement tool, but also not paying the full price of titles, physical titles, and make it available to all employees in a heartbeat. And that's pretty powerful in itself. Just a summary of things I've mentioned, because I've been dabbling a lot. One is, if you have a Netflix-style experience that's engaging, that's all different learners, especially the millennials. If you have the ability to harness lots of different titles, even your own titles that are even maybe employee-generated in one place, but are covering lots of different skills in principle. If you have an element also of involving your family, if you also have an element of collaborating also with your peers, because learning can also be a social thing. You can create book clubs, for instance, where you can get people together and just exchange thoughts on what they've read. As long as there's an economic benefit to it, and as long as it's really fun. As long as it's engaging and it works for me and I can find things I really care about and also will help me be more successful in my job or help me get to exactly that job that I want in the next few years, then it can be really, really, really powerful. Cha-ching, that's what we think is a happy and engaged employee if it's possible if it's possible to cover all of these different bases. Now, how do you create your own Netflix? So we're going to show some examples of what's been done in some companies. So in Spain, we worked with Vodafone, where they had a challenge where they wanted, because of AI, robotics, machine learning, for instance, they were worried that certain departments could become behind the curve, and they also wanted to make sure that people can be engaged. They had some elements of people not talking across different functions, for example. And so they thought, hey, let's find a way where with a catalog of titles that cover emerging technologies, soft skills like negotiations, building the right mindset, and also some elements of titles that are relevant to their jobs, so marketing, for example, programming. So what they did was they selected a collection of 2,000 different titles, including magazines, audiobooks, and ebooks, and they put it together and they created a new brand, a corporate university in a sense, called Vodafone University, #lifelong learning, and they made it free for everyone, for all their employees. They took it to another level. So when you walk into the main reception in Vodafone HQ in Spain, in Madrid, you will see this big poster on the right-hand side. It's like 4 by 6 meters. You can't miss it. If you go to the cafeteria and you collect a tray, you'll see a piece of paper that will say, scan the QR code today so you can download the Vodafone University app. So they've done the best. Even if you go to the toilet, you'll be reminded before you go to the toilet that it exists. So they've really done a really good job in communicating to everyone and using simple grassroots approach that this exists. And so the impact is just amazing. So hundreds of thousands of visits, lots of minutes of active learning, and most of it is through a mobile and a tablet, Android, iPhone, for example. From my knowledge, the most popular titles read are, do you know Sapiens? Have you heard of Sapiens? So we have Sapiens, for example, in English and Spanish. So Sapiens are the most popular ones. A computer magazine was very popular, and then a few others around AI, etc. So it's pretty impressive what's happened in that organization, and their HR L&D had said explicitly about this experience. In 6 months after we reached 170,000 visits, they have what we've seen is they have voluntarily invested. So each employee has decided to invest time in learning and for their own personal development, and the impact of that is what we feel is a big increase in the knowledge that we have as a company, in particular of areas which are important for their industry. In another scenario, there's a conglomerate with 80,000 employees in Mexico that also wanted to, they particularly wanted to build a collaborative culture. And so the CEO also was reading a lot of his own books at home, and he was thinking, I would love to have my own employees read the same thing. Simple as that. And so we thought, okay, why don't I create my own Netflix that is offered for free for all my employees, and also build a collaborative culture using book clubs. And so where they would use their own materials that are aligned with their company values, that are generated by HR, as well as the employees, and then harness it all in one place and offer it for free to all their employees. The result of that is they won a national award for literacy and learning in Mexico, which is a bit odd, but the company did that. And so the last thing is, we're today seeing engagement or levels of already 30 minutes a day, which is quite interesting. We want to try to get to where Netflix is one day, which is 70 minutes on average per day. It's very hard to do, to negotiate between entertainment and education, but we think it could be possible depending on who we work with. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.